One man. Goodbye. Hello, Heisman.
20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 45. There goes Davis. Oh, my God. Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game.
They give it back now to the 30. They're down to the 20. All the band is out on the field. He's going to go into the end zone.
Four-man Alabama rush. Got him. Oh, no, they didn't. Oh, my gracious.
Yep.
How about that?
Gentlemen, the University of Georgia just claimed the 2022 national championship by the score of 65-7. The game has just gone final. Welcome into a live edition of the 3 Tech Pod. We are live reacting to just a barnstorming, wood chipping. I don't know. There are so many different descriptions you could use for that game. Georgia just cemented themselves as a dynasty and is the back-to-back national champions for the first time since 2011, 2012 when Alabama did it. Welcome in, everybody. I'm Mitch Mason, Trey Reeves, Garrett Turney. Guys, I don't know if this is a celebration of life for what TCU was, if this is a funeral. Like, what just happened?
I mean, this game was 10-7 at one point. That's about all I can say for TCU. From the word go, Georgia just showed that they were the better team. And I was texting with, a friend of the show, Joe from Longview, and he was saying, he's an Ohio State fan, just bummed that his team couldn't be on this stage, right? I think he was bummed that he was on the wrong side of the bracket, getting Georgia in the semifinals. And man, it's just sad that we get this. It's sad that TCU ends their season this way. It was a magical season. You can't take anything away from the season that they had. Magical season, magical semifinal win over Michigan. But man, they just did not show up tonight. And that combined with Georgia just immediately firing on all cylinders from the word go, you get what we got here tonight, right? And it was just a laugher early. Like, we knew this one was. When did you guys know this was over? Let me ask you guys that, because I think that's the most interesting. I think even Kirk Herbstreit and Chris Fowler were talking about that on the broadcast. I think for me it was about 24-7, but I'm interested in what you guys think.
See, with this TCU team, I was willing to give them the benefit of the doubt just because they kept coming back and they're that kind of team, right? You can never count them out. But there was just something, I think it was 31 was when that did it for me, where I realized, like, okay, yeah, like, it's going into the half. They're going to get the ball back, right? So they're probably going to have a chance. Then obviously they threw a pick and it became 38. So, but I think at 31, that was the moment where I was like, yeah, I don't think they're going to be able to come back in this one. Man, really tough for TCU, obviously. Such a great story. But man, like, all the credit has to go to Georgia on this one. What they are doing in college football right now is incredible. I'm sure we'll talk about that in a little bit, but man, just what an incredible story for them. Awesome moment for their fan base who have been waiting for so long up until last year. Now to get 2 in a row is just amazing.
I'll let the people decide when this game was over. Your first half drive chart: touchdown, fumble, field goal, touchdown, touchdown, punt, touchdown, interception, touchdown, interception, touchdown. I think you can figure out where this game came off the rails. Somewhere between 17-7 and 38-7 was when the train blew up. The frog jumped into the pond. I showed my girlfriend that I was watching the game with the piano guy, or the piano man meme of the frog jumping off of
the
bridge.
Yeah.
And that truly described the first half of this game. For me, I think it was 24-7. I think after Duggan threw that first pick, 4 plays, they made it 3 yards in 2 minutes. I mean, guys, the Georgia, and we'll talk about both sides of the ball, but this was as dominating a performance that we've seen this side of NCAA 14 playing on rookie sliders. I mean, it just was. TCU couldn't move the football. I've got first half stats. We've got end of game stats, obviously. But, I don't know about you guys. I started taking notes because I knew we were doing this live reaction immediately after. And so I have first quarter notes. I have second quarter notes. didn't write a single thing after that. I mean, we just went to the tweeter. Anything that I posted was straight to the Twitter. Um, let's start with this. How dominating is this run for Georgia? I mean, it seems like, whether the sun has set on Alabama's reign over college football, I think they're no longer the best program in the sport. Now, they're still a dynasty. I still believe that they can win, they can claim championships. I think they could beat a Georgia team. There's no doubt about it. But Georgia is in the middle of a bona fide dynasty. And guys, it really looks like they could do this again next year. We'll talk about the schedule probably a little bit later on, but this is a special run that Kirby Smart has put together. And, it's a team that he's built straight up by recruiting. This is not a transfer portal team. This is homegrown recruits. And that, I think, is extremely impressive in this era of college football.
Yeah, they lost what, 15 guys to the NFL draft last year,
Record.
five first rounders on defense.
Yep.
They don't take a single portal commit. And they are right back and they win the national championship game 65-7. Guys, Kirby Smart is building a monster that is going to surpass what Nick Saban built at Alabama. Kirby Smart is 47 years old and has already won 2 titles at Georgia. Nick Saban didn't win his second national title till he was 57. You think Nick Saban's Alabama had a chokehold on college football for the last decade plus? The next 3 decades are going to be the decade of the dogs, because Kirby's not going anywhere. He's not going in the NFL. He's a Georgia guy. He played at Georgia, and the guy knows how to recruit. They have given him all the resources he needs. It's truly the monster that has awoken, and the jokes were writing themselves for the 40 years between Georgia winning national titles before last year, and this is the monster that has finally awoken, and it's going to be a monster like I don't think we've ever seen in college football before. Now, Nick Saban's going to have a lot to say about that, but Nick Saban's not going to be coaching much longer. And even when he finally retires and hangs it up, whenever that may be, even if it's when he's 85, Kirby's still going to be in his prime, guys. It is going to be fascinating to see if anybody can keep up with Georgia over the next 10 years, 20 years plus as Kirby just continues to build, because the talent's not going anywhere either. They're in the most talent-rich part of the country, and they're going to keep getting these 5-star athletes all over the field.
Yeah, well, and Trey, now that you said that, I think that means Nick Saban has to coach 20, 25 more years, something like that, just because, it seems like every time we get to the end of the season, we say, well, Saban's probably close to being done, and then he never is. But no, you're absolutely right. I think this is the start of the Georgia dynasty. I think that the next decade minimum belongs to Georgia, and it's going to be really tough to do, anything in there if you're another program. I think this is kind of what we saw with the beginning of the decade with Alabama, where they started to get their guys in there, started to turn some stuff around, win a couple championships, and start to assert their dominance. They showed that they're the place to go if you want to develop, go to the NFL, win a championship, and I think that they're proving that. I mean, the fact that they sent so many guys to the draft last year and that they're right back here stomping a TCU team that, by all intents and purposes, like, they were a fantastic team this year. They've done great things. They beat a very good Michigan team who beat that Ohio State team you're talking about, Trey. So, like, there's plenty of back and forth that happened this year in college football. The one thing that didn't really happen was Georgia didn't really get tested too much. I know that they were close with Ohio State there, but there was something about the way that Kirby handled the post game in that one where he was kind of upset that his team ended up in that situation, where I was like, yeah, I kind of got a feeling they're about to roll TCU in this one. So, man, like, I mean, hats off to Georgia for this one. Hats off to everything that they're doing. But I mean, man, like, it's really hard to see where this thing slows down, where this thing goes off the rails. I mean, there'd have to be some kind of seismic shift of college football where rules change and everything else goes different, and conferences realign and everything else. Like, there'd have to be something else, especially when you talk about an expanded playoff. You're talking about giving Georgia the ability to maybe mess up, in Columbia against Mizzou, like it looked like they were about to, and still make a playoff and still be able to dominate teams the way they do on defense and go out there and air it out. I mean, I don't know. It's Georgia's decade at least. And Trey, you might be right. We might be talking about a couple decades of Georgia dominance here.
Well, Let's talk a little bit about TCU because for two reasons. One, there's not much to talk about. The Horned Frogs. I wrote in my first quarter notes, TCU's defense couldn't find the door in an empty room. They looked as lost as a student driver trying to navigate the highway. It was incredible to watch this secondary blow coverage after coverage. Joe Gillespie got quoted by one of the sideline reporters who was listening in on one of his meetings with the team after giving up another touchdown. And he said, "Guys, you've lined up 8 times incorrectly already." And it was like the third drive of the game for Georgia. TCU, the moment was too big for them, which I did not think I'd be saying after time and time again. This TCU team came back from deficits. They nearly clawed back in a Big 12 championship game. They obviously beat Michigan in a big way. It didn't feel like the moment would be too big for them. But, I mean, credit where credit's due. Georgia's defense suffocated that TCU offense. They had 36 total rushing yards. Max Duggan lost more yardage on sacks than the rest of the team gained on the ground, which is just incredible considering Georgia was not a team that had a big pass rush this year. But, you know, talk about TCU's season, talk about the future of the program under Sonny Dykes, the recruiting. I mean, take this wherever you guys want. I'm curious to hear if this kind of colors their season for you or if you're able to look past it in the moment. I mean, as we are literally watching Georgia hoist the championship trophy right now, talk a little bit about the Horned Frogs.
Well, see, I think the thing is, I don't know even if the moment was too big for them. I just think Georgia was way too good for them. I think Georgia is on a different level from the rest of college football right now. And I think you have to just say, look, you were kind of playing for second this year. And it sucks to say it, but I think that kind of just is the truth. There's a very distinct tier of teams. And, we thought maybe the gap was pretty close up there at the top, but Georgia just proved it tonight that that ain't true. They were by far the best team in the country. TCU from here, I mean, clearly this is the new model team for today's college football, right? With the portal and being able to go get your guys. I mean, they just stacked up on a loaded portal class. They got their new coach with Sonny Dykes. I think that this is still going to be bright for them, especially in the new Big 12. I think that there's plenty of good days ahead for them. I don't know that they'll be able to get back to this height just because it's so difficult to repeat success to any degree, right? Any team that gets there, it's difficult to say that you're going to make it back, right? It's just hard to put together that good of a season where you can make it to a championship. That being said, they've got what they need, right? They have some resources. I know that the buzz around Fort Worth is, huge right now in terms of what that program is. The applications are going up. They're getting recognized more at a national level. And so, yeah, it'd be really cool for them to kind of capitalize on this moment and keep going. But yeah, I don't know what it looks like in terms of direct football success, but I do think you could see TCU use this to kind of leverage themselves to more, maybe permanent long term success as a football program.
Yeah, they absolutely can. I it's hard because do you think losing in this way takes away a little bit of the legitimacy of this season? I don't know that it does. It's hard for me to put myself in the minds of a recruit that was really excited to consider TCU for them making it that far. And they say they lose 65-7. And it might be a little bit of a reality check for some of the recruits that are considering TCU at this point. But the bottom line is they are moving into a situation with the new Big 12 that's going to be wide open. There's going to be 3 or 4 teams, I think, immediately trying to claim that top spot in the new Big 12. And, you've got the champions, Kansas State this year. You've got Texas Tech that looks like they're on the rise. You've got Baylor that seems like a good coach situation. Cincinnati was in the playoff a year ago. BYU and UCF are going to be interesting additions. Houston getting more resources. I didn't even mention Oklahoma State. That conference is going to be just bananas to follow after
Yeah,
Texas and
that's for
Oklahoma
sure.
leave. And even starting next year with all the new additions. So it's going to be wide open. TCU certainly has the resources and I think the coaching staff to get there. I definitely want to see what the encore performance is like next year. You come out your first game next year and lose to Coach Prime in that opener. then maybe some cracks start to show in that program. You might say it might have been just a magical season with Max Duggan. I don't think that's what's going to happen, but just to play devil's advocate, they did go 5-1 in one possession games this year. That is
Yeah.
an astounding statistic. Most teams do not do that well in one possession games. Just for reference, Georgia only played in 2 one possession games this year. And the fact that those two teams were facing off in the national championship game just says how bonkers this season was. But yeah, I'm really interested to see what the encore performance is like next year for TCU. They have an amazing transfer class coming in. I think, if it's Chandler Morris running the show, which it looks like it probably will be for TCU,
Mhm.
he's going to have JoJo Earl to throw to. He's going to have a lot of weapons. He's going to have a lot of key contributors on the defense coming back, but
Sure.
they're losing a lot of really big time players for them too. So that encore performance is going to show me a lot about what kind of staying power they have.
TCU is losing between 40 and 50 players from this roster,
Yeah.
depending on transfers and declarations for the draft. Which, listen, at this, after a game like tonight, you figure maybe some guys are a little bit more willing to go ahead and declare for the draft and
Yeah.
move on, right? We'll see exactly what happens, but yeah, it's going to be a true roster overhaul in TCU. Now, Trey, you mentioned they get what feels like half of the Crimson Tide to transfer to them this year. So TCU is going to be stocked with talent, especially on the offensive side of the ball. That the true indicator of if this team is going to go not to new heights necessarily, but maintain success in year two under Sonny Dykes. What does this defense look like? They had 6 transfers come in and start for them on the defensive side, and while their corners were some of the best corners in the country, um, Trayvon was Hodges Tomlinson,
Mhm.
Ladanian's nephew, was the top rated cover corner in the country this year. And that was with a scoring defense that ranked 74th. So if you went up the middle or ran on TCU, you were scoring points this year. If you tried to throw it down the sideline, maybe not. They're going to lose those guys. And look, Georgia got whatever they wanted and more tonight. I mean, even Carson Beck came in. All the second teamers came in and moved at will against that TCU defense. A demoralized team that had quit, I get it. But that defense has to take some gigantic steps forward in year two. For me, that's what I think I'm going to be watching and seeing. Okay, how do you develop? How does this 3-3-5? How does this bear front? They went to a bear front towards the end of the season, which is not a scheme that you see very much in college football. How does Joe Gillespie, if he stays, if he doesn't get a better offer somewhere else, how does he kind of develop that defense? And I think, and let me know what you guys think. Trey, you obviously just kind of told us where you think they're going to be in that pecking order. Garrett, I'm curious where you put TCU. I do think that they're automatically at the top with Kansas State, with probably, we'll see what we get from Oklahoma. Texas is 8-5 this year. They're probably going to take some sort of step forward, but is TCU the odds-on favorite right now to not repeat as Big 12 champs, but make it back to Dallas and clinch a title?
I think if you had to pick one team, I would say probably TCU, but if you gave me TCU or the field, I'd take the field.
Yeah.
I don't think that I feel comfortable saying that, like, oh, yeah, they're for sure, surefire, gonna repeat, no problem. I just don't know who else I would take ahead of them right now. And that's not to say I think that they're the best in the conference right now. I have no idea where they're going to line up. I'd have to see where the rosters shake out. And I mean, there's still plenty of time for transfers to happen. I think this is actually kind of a selling point for TCU is, hey, you saw the talent gap pretty clearly, but imagine what we could do if you helped us close the talent gap, right?
Right.
And so I think that that's probably a selling point for TCU in terms of recruiting and in the portal. Um, but no, I don't know where I'd put them right now in the Big 12. Still too much to be determined, I think, on the transfer side. And I think maybe once all that closes, we'll have a better idea. But at the moment, I don't know who else you'd put in front of them.
Yeah, I'm in wait and see mode. I really want to see how the transfers gel. I really want to see if there's a little bit of a hangover from losing this game to Georgia this badly on that program. Sometimes you see games like this become just dark clouds. And look, I don't want that for TCU. Let me be abundantly clear. That is not what I want for TCU. I would love nothing more for them to just continue this great vibe that they've got going on in Fort Worth. I really would love that for them. I'm just really in wait and see mode to see what kind of staying power it has, especially with all this chaos that you're injecting into the Big 12. The Big 12 is already kind of the NFC East light, where it doesn't seem like anybody, since Oklahoma's stepped down from their pedestal, seems like it's just completely wide open, right? Oklahoma won it however many years in a row. I can't remember now. But since then, we've gotten four unique title game participants in the last 4 years. So
Hmm.
interested to see how that turns out. Definitely, they're going to have the talent. They're definitely going to be have something to say about the Big 12 championship next year. But I'm interested to see what kind of staying power they have. Next year is going to tell me a lot about Sonny Dykes as a coach because, as you and I, Mitch, were talking about on the preview show, we can hype up Sonny Dykes, and it's very easy to hype him up on this year, but one great season does not make a great coach. And I
No.
think you have a lot of programs that rush to extending a coach, rush to, you know, going all in on a coach that has one really good year, and then they're left wondering what the heck happened 4 or 5 years down the road when they're having to start over. So I want to see what happens next year. It's going to tell me a lot if Sonny Dykes can do wave his magic wand again with a completely overhauled roster and a lot of new talent, but lots of new faces as well.
Should we talk quarterbacks? I think Stetson Bennett, Max Duggan both have really interesting stories, and we've obviously broken that down on pods before this, but Stetson Bennett, two-time national champion now, Heisman finalist this past season. Everybody knows the story. Walked on at Georgia, didn't get the job, didn't have any sort of playing time, transfers to a junior college, comes back, still doesn't win the job, and ends up then taking over the reins after JT Daniels couldn't get anything going. Jamie Newman just leaves the program. And lo and behold, waltzes to two national championships. Max Duggan, on the other hand, a heart issue a couple of years ago. His career is in jeopardy, doesn't win the job this year, takes over in the second quarter after Chandler Morris goes down with a season ending injury, Heisman runner up, and a national championship appearance. The thought is that both of these guys will be drafted, that they have an NFL future, whether it's playing or holding a clipboard, they will be on NFL franchises. Where do you guys kind of rate these two quarterbacks when you think about their performance, not only, tonight this season, but just in the story of college football? It felt like we were really treated to something special over the last, 2 years.
Yeah, I think it's amazing that these two guys were the ones facing off in the national championship. In the world of recruiting rankings and 5 stars and 4 stars ruling the day, we get Stetson Bennett and Max Duggan facing off in the national championship game. And Stetson Bennett, man, just hearing his story, that's what college football is all about, right? Going to games at Georgia with his dad growing up. They said on the broadcast tonight he wanted nothing more than to just go touch the grass on the
Hmm.
field. And here he is leading the return to glory for Georgia. And tonight, he was more than just a feel good story. He absolutely balled out tonight.
Yeah.
He could do no wrong for this Georgia offense. 18 to 25 for 304 yards, 4 touchdowns through the air. He added 3 carries for 39 yards and another 2 touchdowns, 6 total touchdowns for
Tied
Stetson
Joe
Bennett.
tied Joe Burrow for the most in a championship game ever.
Yeah, it just absolutely insane. And we were talking off camera before we hit record. I personally think he earned himself a lot of money in the
Mhm.
NFL draft tonight. And I know there's a lot of eyes on him. He's definitely not the most polished quarterback in the world. The height is going to be a huge question when he shows up at interviews with NFL teams, but the dude's a winner. The dude has lost 2 games as a starting quarterback, I think. And like, you can't say enough about him. Dude's a winner. He has a ton of moxie. He has a ton of competitive grip. All the great things we were saying about Max Duggan all year, 100% true. Don't take that away from him. Even though he had a really poor performance tonight, I don't think all of it was his fault. His O line was just in shambles all
Bad.
night. I think they could be accused of endangerment and abandonment after their performance tonight. But all those great things we said about Max Duggan all year, Stetson Bennett, man, like really stole the show tonight, and he really, really impressed me with just playing lights out football. It was just as close to a perfect game as you could possibly get.
Yeah, and coming into the playoffs, remember too, we weren't necessarily talking about Stetson Bennett being a reliable offensive player, right? As in terms of a guy who would come in here and put up numbers, but his performance here in the playoffs, I think you're right, Trey. I think it has earned him a lot of money, but I think it's also earned him a place among some of the best in the college football playoff era.
Hmm.
Not necessarily in terms of being showy and all the other stuff, but I mean, come on, the guy put up 6 touchdowns, loads of yards. I mean, just looked unstoppable tonight. It didn't look like there was any. I mean, there were points. I even said this to my wife when we were watching it. I was like, I think Georgia's just kind of doing this and then picking a play because they just can run whatever they want to run right now. I didn't think it looked very difficult for them. I thought Stetson made it look super easy. Obviously, having the run game that they had, fantastic. But like, I don't know. It seems really easy for them, and especially for him tonight. And that's not to take away from Max Duggan at all. Max Duggan has been a competitor all year. He's done a really good job. I think there were some issues tonight, obviously with accuracy, overthrowing guys. Maybe he was a little hopped up, but I also think he was just rushed, like you were saying. That offensive line. There were a couple of times it didn't look like they were even trying, and I'm talking
Yeah.
earlier in the game too. Like there were a couple early in the game where I was like, "Are
Yeah.
like where are we going here?" I don't know. I don't know what they were looking for. It didn't look like they were picking up stunts correctly, and so I feel bad for Max that was the effort that he got. I don't want to totally pin it on his offensive line because I'm sure there's plenty of throws he'd want back, but yeah, it seemed like it kind of got away from him there, and he was trying to force it and make too much happen, which is, it's understandable when you're down, 10-17 to Georgia at a certain point. So yeah, I think both of these quarterbacks absolutely balled out. And again, like y'all were saying, not from guys who are highly heralded coming out from the high
Hmm.
school ranks. It is really cool to see these guys both end up here. And, I do think they'll both end up, at the very least making rosters, if not being, competent backups, maybe getting some chances to shine in the NFL.
I think, yeah, I feel bad for Max because 14 to 22, 152 yards, 2 picks. His offensive line was dreadful. And again, like I mentioned, this is not a Georgia team whose pass rush was really anything special this year. They did not have the elite edge presence. Now, their defensive tackles may be the best in the country. Jalen Carter has the potential to be a top 5 pick as a defensive tackle, which is just incredible. Um, but this was not a unit that was known for getting to the quarterback in their front 7. They could bring safeties, they could do stunts. Georgia had to work to get pressure on the quarterback this year, and yet 3 4-man rushes had Max Duggan running for his life, sacked countless times. I'm not even sure how many sacks they ended up with. At least 5 sacks. And that was just in the first half. The 2 picks that Duggan threw, the first one he threw into double coverage on an out route. He had no time. I mean, it truly was a do or die play. Picked off, sets up a quick Georgia touchdown. The second time, he just airmailed Quentin Johnston, who was on lock all night long. Uh, and look, there was no chance to run the football. I mentioned they had 36 yards total. They got behind in the blink of an eye. Georgia scored on their first 6 possessions of the game. They score on 10 of 12. That also has never been done in the college football playoff or BCS era. It was over in the blink of an eye. And, you give Max all the credit in the world for trying, but goodness, this was boys playing men tonight. And, going back to all the points that we made about Georgia and the dynasty run that they're set up for, there's no end in sight for this team. I mean, again, another stellar recruiting class is coming in, and you have sophomores that contributed on every single downs. And guess what?
Freshmen too.
And
Bear
freshmen.
Alexander
Hmm.
was out there making plays. All
Oh,
kinds
dude.
of just
Yeah.
youth all over
North
the field.
Texas's own Bear Alexander. Um,
Branson Robinson in mop up duty too with 2
yeah.
touchdowns at the very end of the game.
Yeah. So, all right. So we've talked about TCU's future next year in the Big 12 and where they could potentially rank. I'm pulling up right now Georgia's 2023 schedule to.
Georgia's going 15-0. I'll just go ahead and cut you right there. Georgia's about to make it 3 in a row. That they have a super easy schedule next year. I can't remember who their across conference is, but like
Oh, I'm going to
I
read
remember
it.
looking at it. It's not good.
Oh, I'm going to
It's
read it,
it's
gentlemen.
it's easy.
Your national champion Georgia Bulldogs start their season on September the 2nd against the Skyhawks of UT Martin. They will then
Win,
play Ball State. They will
win.
then host South Carolina. They'll play UAB. They will go at Auburn, home against Kentucky, at Vandy before a crucial bye week and then they go to Jacksonville to play Florida. They play Missouri. They play Ole Miss. They go at Tennessee. They go at Georgia Tech. Guys, not only is that schedule Charmin soft, I named 4 true road games. 4. They play 7 games between the hedges, and Jacksonville has basically been home away from home as they've dominated the Gators as of late. I can't find a game on this schedule that I go, yeah, they're losing that one. Tennessee, maybe because it's on the road, but that's going to have to be a special Volunteers team that knocks them off with, a week to go before they play for a conference championship, essentially. Like, I mean, is it just cash the ticket? 12-0 Georgia. See you in Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, if you can find odds on that right now, I would 100% run to the booth because Carson Beck's probably going to be the quarterback. He looks pretty dang good. He looked
Yeah.
really good out there in mop-up duty tonight, and he's looked good in other spots as well. Talented guy that's going to lead an offense with a ton of great talent in the backfield. Still going to be throwing to Brock Bowers. He's still going to be throwing to elite receivers on the outside. Still going to have one of the best offensive lines in the college football blocking for him. And the defense just reloads every single year. So, yeah, I mean, maybe Beamer gets him in week 3. Maybe they're overlooking Shane Beamer, but that's their first game. That's really the only one that they're going to be looking forward to in the first couple months of the season. So, yeah, no, it's a weak schedule. I'm shocked they're not playing in one of those kickoff games, or they're not playing somebody with a pulse. I know they have the Georgia Tech game every year at the end of the year that counts as their Power 5 non-conference matchup, but dang, like supplementing that with UT Martin, Ball State, and UAB, like, what are we doing? Come on,
Not a murder.
Georgia. Like, we don't need to schedule
They
for a
played
bowl game.
Oregon this year. Give them a break. It's
Well,
fine.
and they
I
were
know, but they should be doing that every year. Like,
they were
they should be, yeah.
they were supposed to play Oklahoma, and
That's right. Okay, I
that game
forgot
got
about that.
canceled.
I'll back off
Oh
on that.
yeah, yeah.
They were supposed to play Oklahoma. I
To be
completely
fair, yeah, Georgia fans are screaming into their dial right now, going, "We had that game taken away from us." That's fair. They were
That's true.
supposed to play
That's
the Sooners.
100% true. I apologize.
But
I
even
forgot.
still, even if they play
Can we
Oklahoma,
not find like Syracuse or Illinois or like, I don't know, Washington State?
Robert and I finally left Syracuse. That place is in shambles now.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Michigan 2022 levels of soft in the non-con.
I mean, they're gonna have to work to not do it.
Yeah.
This is, and I think what's so mind blowing as we are, literally 12 months out from the next national championship. We're 7 months out, 7 months, 8 months, 7 months, 7 months,
Yeah,
8
7 or 8.
whatever.
Who's
From well, me, because I'm trying to plan how many off-season shows we're gonna have. You look at what this team brings back, what this team will face, maybe as an SEC West opponent, and we've got so much time to talk about that. It is hard for me to imagine a world where Georgia not only doesn't make the college football playoff next year, but isn't the number 1 seed. I mean, am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. It's
No,
as simple as that.
we're talking about them going on a dynasty run, and we're like, are we shocked if they're going to be the number? They're going to be number 1 seed. They're going to win all their games. They're going to be 12-0. They're going to be 13-0 after the championship game. They're going to get the 1 seed. They're going to roll through it again. Like, this is just what Georgia's going to do. I think until you find a way for somebody else to come up and stop them. I think when you look around the SEC, especially like teams like Bama, what they're losing, Tennessee, what they're losing, like there's not necessarily a lot of challengers to what Georgia is right now in the SEC. So somebody else is going to have to step up. And I know that there's lots of teams, lots of coaches, lots of NIL, lots of, recruiting and everything else. You're not where Georgia is right now. That's just all that it comes down to. Nobody's where Georgia is right now. And until somebody proves that they can do that, you just have to give the benefit of the doubt. The same way that we've been saying "cuz Bama" for the last 10 years, we're going to be saying "cuz Georgia."
They're
Yeah.
only. Oh, go ahead, Trey.
I was just gonna say I'm skimming through their future non-conference opponents right now, and I take back any soft scheduling accusations I can make. They're scheduling at least 2 and usually 3 Power 5 opponents for the rest of the 2020s. after next year. And of course, like we said, Oklahoma got taken away.
At least that'll make it entertaining, right? Just some stats, factoids. I've forgotten which one of you, as soon as we hopped in the call, pointed out that the over under for the game was 61.5. And Georgia obviously covers that by their lonesome. Boy, if you had the under, I wonder if there was a time that you were feeling really good, which, as Trey points out just about every time we talk about it, why life is too short to bet the under. But I'm sure there was a point where you're like, surely TCU's defense gets a stop, right? Like 6 times in a row. That's too
I
many.
don't
Maybe at
know.
the curtain call for Stetson Bennett, he comes out. You're like, oh, they're not going to really try anymore,
If
and
you
then
had
they
a
run in 2
live,
more touchdowns after that.
if you got a live under of like 80 or something, maybe you're feeling good. I don't know, man.
Yeah.
It looked like it was going to be a runaway pretty early.
Georgia possessed the ball for nearly 40 minutes. 37 minutes, almost even. They had 32 first downs. TCU had 9. The Bulldogs were not forced off the field on third down very often, 9 of 13. They had 589 yards, 254 yards, which I think was really just the icing on the cake. Every single time Georgia needed to pick up chunk plays, either Stetson Bennett was throwing to Lad McConkey or Brock Bowers, who was uncoverable tonight, or they were gashing TCU with, let me see how many guys they ran with. Georgia had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rushers of the football tonight.
And 9 guys caught a pass.
And 9 guys caught a pass. So
Insane.
take your freaking pick. Brock Bowers, 7 catches, 152 yards, 1 touchdown. Guys, oh, by the way, he's got to come back for one more season. He's not even draft eligible. He's a sophomore.
I also saw this earlier. Georgia ran 72 total plays and scored 65 points on those 72 plays. They're almost getting a point a play.
That's pretty efficient. That's pretty.
You just
pretty
can't like.
efficient.
What more do you want to say, guys? Like it was 65-7. It was just an absolute drubbing. Again, I feel bad for TCU. Like I really do. Like it as they kept pouring the points on. I'm not saying Georgia, was running up the score, doing anything immoral from the unwritten rules of college football, but man, as they kept pouring it on, I just kept feeling for Max Duggan and feeling for all those TCU fans that paid $1,500 a ticket to watch that.
See,
No
and
kidding.
the play after they get the sack to turn it over on 4th, they hand it off to the short side of the field into a bunch of traffic, and he just little scuttle step and then just swerves his way around for a touchdown. I'm like, what do you want him to do? Like,
Yeah,
do you want
exactly.
them to just fall down and disrespect you like that? Like, they're
Or
gonna run
take a knee.
positive
Yeah,
plays until they can take a knee.
short of taking a knee with the whole fourth quarter, which is just absolutely disrespectful.
Right,
Like,
you can't do that.
yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah.
Only 3 teams have gone 15-0 in the college football playoff era: the 2018 Clemson Tigers, the 2019 LSU Tigers, and this 2022 Georgia Bulldogs team. There will be comparisons, I think, especially to that LSU team of 2019, which a lot of people have crowned them as the greatest college football team of all time. I think at least I'm certainly amongst that camp. I don't know where you guys net out, but
Yeah.
that's going to be a conversation I'm sure we're going to have during the offseason, but there's no doubt we witnessed history this year, a feel-good story to boot with Stetson Bennett. And guys, I don't really know that I have very much to say right now. I mean, we made it almost 40 minutes live reacting to a 65-7 drubbing.
Well, my last thing I was going to say on that is just with that 2019 LSU team, obviously everyone loves to talk about who was on that team. And we love, especially now that they're all succeeding in the NFL. Oh, there was this guy, there was that guy, there was this guy. I'm curious to see who from Georgia ends up in that conversation,
Sure.
right? Like, who are the guys who right now maybe we're a little bit overlooking, but we're saying, you know what? Hey, Lad McConkey, like, is he going to be the next, prolific white wide receiver in New England? Or what's going to happen? Like, was Bill Belichick scouting that one? I don't know.
Patriots have purchased his draft rights already. Don't worry.
Absolutely. But like Brock Bowers obviously is going to be huge. Which of these running backs is going to have a great career? where does Stetson Bennett go from here? Obviously, like I'm really excited to see where some of these players end up, and maybe some of these younger guys like an Adonai Mitchell or people like that. Like where do they end up by the time
Yeah.
all this is said and done?
Yeah, that lad McConkey has a lot of Wes Welker in him. I'll tell you what.
Oh yeah,
He
real
does.
lunch
But
pail guy.
real lunch pill guy, coach on the field. But when do we start to hate Georgia? That's my question for you guys.
Oh,
When do
It'll
we
be
start to
next year.
You think next year? You think if they're
Yeah,
rolling through at 14-0 again, we're just saying, please, someone beat Georgia in the playoff?
because right now it's just the back to back and it's not Bama, so it kind of feels nice. But like I think sometime next year we're going to be saying, okay, this is getting pretty old. Can it just be not Georgia and not Bama? And I think, yeah, at that point, I don't know exactly when it'll be. Maybe it'll be, a big matchup with Tennessee at that last, one of the last games of the season, and it's super highly ranked, and it's number one versus number three, and then they beat them by 40, and we're just like, this isn't fun anymore. Like, I don't want to, I don't want to watch Georgia anymore.
I don't know. I grew up with an affinity for Georgia just simply from watching them on TV, from playing the NCAA video games. So for me, it's kind of this weird nostalgia watching them do so well when listen, I mean they were a 10-win team a lot of years under Mark Richt, but they weren't ever a national championship contender, right? They were a good team. They'd lose to an Alabama, they'd lose to Florida, they'd drop a game here and there, and have a nice trip in a Florida bowl game, right, to end the season. And now, obviously, they're standing atop the mountain. So I don't know personally when that's going to get old. I will say if they keep just drubbing teams, I think that day is approaching quickly. But and this will be a topic for the offseason. I think as we move towards an expanded playoff, even if Georgia goes on a North Dakota State like run, right, where they win 9 of 11, which heaven forbid that happen. But even if that were to happen, I think having the hope and the storylines going in of 11 other teams in 2024, for me as a college football fan and as someone who, now covers this sport in whatever capacity this is, I think that would be enough for me to at least offset some of that frustration of, dang it, they got it again. And, I don't
That's
know how
definitely
you
fair.
guys feel about that. I think it would get stale, but at the very least, we're not in a BCS era. We'll be exiting this 4-team era where you have limited options with which to beat one of those juggernauts.
Yeah, and I think this game shows again the need because I don't think TCU, as great as their story was this year, I don't think they're running the gauntlet of a 12-team playoff to get to Georgia, right? To set up what we saw on the field tonight. So when we have the 12-team playoff, you're going to get the most battle tested, the best possible team to face off against the juggernaut, and I think that's great for college football. And yeah, I don't know. Georgia just seems more likable of a dynasty to me. Maybe it's because they don't have Nick Saban. Maybe it's because my team hasn't been personally victimized by Georgia yet. And maybe if, maybe it gets old in the next couple of years. But I don't know. Georgia just seems a little bit more likable to me. I'm fine hanging on with the Georgia dynasty. If there are overlords for the next 10 years, I don't know. I could be a little bit more okay with it than some other alternatives, I guess.
Well, the big thing too is I think, we haven't had any of those like rat poison moments with Kirby Smart, like where he's like
Yeah.
really made the big flub or said the thing that pisses everyone off. So,
Yeah.
until he really steps in it, I think, we'll like Kirby Smart a little bit more.
People have
Is it
taken
'cause
their
they're just
shots at him. They definitely have, and Kirby just kind of managed to
it's like,
dodge or nah, man, don't worry about whatever goes on behind the curtain.
and
He hasn't had those Jimbo Saban moments that make you roll your eyes and go, oh my gosh, come on, guys.
yeah, he just kind of does his thing, recruits a bunch of 5 stars, and
Hmm.
then beats the snot out of you with them. Like that's
Yeah,
kind of refreshing. I
Yeah.
kind of like it.
I'm
it's
looking
no
for the
nonsense.
PlayStation controller in his back pocket.
Well,
I
and I
mean,
mean, like,
Yeah.
even looking at his little press before the game tonight, the little sideline reporter, hey, coach, what's the, like, what do you have to say? What's the mindset going into this? And blah, blah. He just goes, like, aggressive.
yeah,
Yeah,
just
it's awesome.
just
He
win,
just
baby.
says it, and they're like, is that it? He's like, yeah, just aggressive. We need to be
Shout out,
aggressive.
shout out Al Davis. Just win, baby.
Just win, baby.
Well, guys, not the night that we were hoping for from a competition standpoint. I think happy moments, obviously, for Stetson Bennett, for the Georgia fan base. They were the best team in college football. We knew that coming in. The only question in our mind was how close would TCU keep it, and if they were somehow able to pull off a historic upset again. They came into the season with 200 plus odds to 200 plus odds to win the national championship and almost as long odds to get to the game. It would have been historic. And I think we would have had to react to that. I don't know that any of us would have been able to claim, yeah, we could see that coming. I don't know that I saw this coming either. This absolute railroading of TCU. I knew there was a good chance that Georgia would run away with it. I did not think we would see 65, but it is what it is. And now we head into the dark, cold off season. We're going to do our best, obviously, to keep things entertaining. We've been working behind the scenes. We have big plans in store, audio-wise, video-wise. We've been lining up interviews in our Twitter DMs. I've been reaching out to analysts, to experts across this country. So if you are tempted to tune out and go, what on earth are they possibly going to talk about this offseason? I would invite you to tune in, because I'm going to get as many different perspectives and as many different programs on this show in this offseason as we possibly can. Trey obviously does a great job engineering a lot of the audio, creating graphics on Instagram. Garrett is the mastermind behind all the YouTube content and all the work that goes in there. And gentlemen, nearly 80 episodes since May. We've done over 4,500 minutes of content since we started this show. So really, to conclude season one, I just like to thank you guys for the effort that you put in, the willingness to jump on a project here and make this happen. It's a lot of hard work. I think that we all realized very quickly, but we're dedicated to this craft. We love what we do, and we're excited for year two.
Well, you're very welcome, Mitch.
Yeah, good. Couldn't ask for a better couple of guys to do this with. It's been a lot of fun. Can't wait to get going for season 2.
And obviously, it's been a great time. Glad to do this with you guys.
Well, gentlemen, let's wrap it here. Georgia, your 2022 national champions. I wonder if their athletic director is going to just start preemptively giving Kirby Smart trophies that he can just etch-a-sketch 23, 24, 25.
Might as well.
A la Texas A&M. We'll see what happens there.
No one else is going to embarrass themselves in that way, let's be honest.
That's very real.
Appreciate you guys, all your effort. Appreciate you, the fans, the listeners, hanging with us, rocking with us all season long. We will be back starting next weekend. I think we'll be back on our Thursday. We'll have an episode Thursday. Sure. And we'll be back on our regularly scheduled program. We'll probably go to one episode per week during the off season. Then I'm going to work in as many conversations and interviews as I can. But for the 2022 season, for Trey Reeves, for Garrett Turney, I'm Mitch Mason. Thank you for being a part of season 1 of the 3 Technique. Until next time, so long, everybody.
Gracious him! How about that?